Long before that night, my life was simple. Predictable, even. I worked the evening shift at a small cafe off Willow Creek Road, the kind of place where locals came more for conversation than coffee. My world revolved around routine. Wake up late, open the shop at 3, serve lattes to college kids and retirees, close up around 11, and walk home under the glow of street lamps and moonlight. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked it that way. My cottage sat near the edge of town, tucked behind a stretch of woods that most people avoided after dark. The house was old, a leftover from my grandparents' generation. Creaky floors, chipped paint, and a porch that groaned under the slightest weight. I lived alone unless you counted my cat Finch, who mostly kept to himself. That November night, the rain hadn't stopped since sunset. By the time I locked the cafe door, my jeans clung to my legs and my umbrella had lost its battle with the wind. The walk home was only 20 minutes, but it felt like a mile of cold needles on my skin. When I finally reached my porch, I let out a shaky breath of relief. The air smelled like wet pine and earth, clean, familiar. I hung my coat, changed into dry clothes, and set water to boil for tea. Finch meowed from his perch by the window, tail flicking, eyes fixed outside. "What's wrong, buddy?" I asked, rubbing his head. He didn't move, just stared. I brushed it off. The storm was loud, probably just the sound of branches hitting the siding. I curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, and turned on the small lamp beside me. Thunder rumbled in the distance, deep and slow. The rain against the windows almost felt comforting, until I heard it. A sound from the porch. Slow, deliberate creaks, wood groaning under the weight of something heavy. I muted the TV and held my breath. 1, 2, 3 steps. Then silence. Probably the wind, I whispered to myself, though even saying it out loud didn't make it true. I peeked through the curtain. The porch light flickered once, twice, and then went dark. The yard was nothing but black water and shadows. Nobody there. When the bulb flickered back to life, I froze. Across the wooden planks of my porch were wet footprints, large, bare, leading toward the front door. My heart climbed into my throat. I stepped back from the window, every nerve in my body suddenly alive. I locked the deadbolt, then the chain. Checked every window. Finch darted under the couch as if confirming what I already feared. Something wasn't right. And then came the second sound. A faint scraping from the back door. It was soft at first, like someone dragging something across the glass. Then came a single knock. Slow. Measured. That was when the kettle screamed, startling me so hard I almost dropped my phone. I dialed 911 with trembling fingers. The dispatcher's calm voice barely cut through the pounding in my ears. "Ma'am, stay inside. Officers are on the way. Do not open any doors." I didn't. I stood frozen in the middle of my living room, eyes darting between the front and back doors. The scraping stopped. For 10 long minutes, the world was nothing but thunder and silence. Then were flashing red and blue lights through the rain. When the police arrived, they found the footprints leading off the porch and into the woods. One of them shone his flashlight over the glass near the couch. There, smeared in mud, was a single handprint. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. The next morning, sunlight poured weakly through the clouds. The ground was still wet, glistening with puddles, but the world seemed too quiet, like the rain had washed away all the noise, leaving only unease behind. 2 officers came back around noon to take a statement. Officer Hart, tall and calm-eyed, sat at my kitchen table, jotting notes as I recounted every sound, every flicker, every detail. "You didn't see anyone?" he asked. "No," I said. "Just the footprints." He nodded slowly. "No sign of forced entry." "You sure all doors were locked?" "Yes, I checked twice." He exchanged a glance with his partner. "Could have been a drifter. We get some passing through after storms. Maybe looking for shelter." That explanation made sense, too much sense. It was easier to believe in a harmless stranger than something darker. Still, when I looked out at the woods, I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever had been there wasn't just passing through. That evening, I replaced the porch light and bought new locks. My friend Kara from the cafe dropped by with dinner. "You okay?" she asked, setting the takeout bag on the counter. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." She frowned. "You should stay with someone for a few nights." "I'll be fine." But the truth was I hadn't been fine since that handprint. Every creak in the floorboards, every flicker of shadow set my heart racing. Later that night, as I tried to sleep, I heard something again. a faint hum like static or low whispering coming from the porch. I held my breath and listened. It stopped. When I finally fell asleep near dawn, I dreamt of footprints in the rain, circling the house. 2 days later, a man came into the cafe asking for directions. He was tall, with a wet jacket and a quiet smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey," he said to me. "You know where Willow Creek Road connects to Old Mill Lane?" Something about his voice made my stomach twist. Calm. Too calm. "Yeah," I said, pointing vaguely toward the north window. "About 2 miles down, then left." He nodded, thanked me, and left. But as he pushed the door open, I noticed the mud on his boots, dried in thick streaks like he'd walked through the same woods behind my house. I told Officer Hart about it the next day, but without proof there wasn't much they could do. That night I slept with a flashlight in my hand. And then around 2 a.m. I woke up to the sound of rain again, and footsteps. This time they weren't on the porch. They were inside the house. The first thing I did was grab Finch, who was hissing at the hallway. The second thing was call 911 again, whispering so low I could barely hear myself. "I think someone's inside," I said. "Stay quiet, ma'am. Officers are on the way. Can you lock yourself in a room?" I backed into the bedroom, locked the door, and crouched behind the bed. The footsteps were slow, heavy, deliberate. Then came the creak of the living room floor. A pause, then another step. My phone buzzed, Kara calling. I silenced it immediately, afraid the noise would give me away. And then, silence. The longest silence I'd ever known. I don't remember how long I waited before the sirens came again. When the officers entered, they found the front door wide open. Muddy prints led halfway across the living room, then stopped. No exit trail. No windows broken. No sign of forced entry. Like he'd vanished into the air. Hart looked at me, his face pale. "You said you saw someone?" I heard him. "He was here." He nodded slowly, as if trying to believe it. "We'll have someone watch the area for a few days." But nobody ever came back. A month later, I packed up what little I owned and left the cottage for good. Kara helped me load boxes into her truck. "You sure about this?" she asked. "Yeah, I can't stay here." I looked once more at the porch. The new bulb still flickered faintly, casting weak light over the planks. The rain had returned soft and steady, and for a moment I swore I saw a faint shape standing by the tree line. But when I blinked, it was gone. I moved into a small apartment closer to town. New locks, new neighbors. But even now, sometimes at night, when the rain starts to fall, I still think I hear it. That slow, steady creak of footsteps on old wood. And I wonder if whoever stood on my porch that night was ever caught, or if he's still out there, waiting for another light to flicker in the storm. Fear is not always paranoia. Sometimes it's your mind recognizing danger before your logic catches up. Never ignore the small signs that tell you something is wrong. Safety isn't just about locks and doors. It's about listening to the voice inside that whispers, "Leave." You never think the night's going to change your life until it does. It was late August, that heavy part of summer when the air feels like a damp towel over your face. I'd just finished the closing shift at Redwood Diner, the kind of small-town place that smells like coffee and bacon no matter the hour. My name's Akan Sophia Allenra, 26 years old, still living in the same Kentucky county I'd been born in. That night I'd stayed an extra hour to help restock the walk-in fridge. Carol, my manager, was down with a summer cold and needed all the help she could get. By the time I wiped down the last table and killed the neon sign, it was close to midnight. The world outside felt hollowed out. Just the buzz of insects, the hum of the highway far off, and that faint metallic taste in the air right before rain. My route home was second nature. Cut down to Ridge Road, take the curve past the post office, and follow the back road along the tree line until I hit Maple Hollow, where my little house waited. No streetlights, no cameras, just darkness and the steady beam of my headlights carving through it. I was humming along to an old song on the radio when my engine coughed. Once, twice, then the power died like somebody had pulled a plug. The dashboard lights dimmed, and the car coasted to a stop beside a stretch of overgrown mailboxes. "Come on," I muttered, turning the key again. Click, click. Nothing. It was the kind of silence that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. I pulled my phone out of my bag, no signal. I lifted it toward the windshield, still nothing. Great. I told myself I'd wait a few minutes. Cars pass this road sometimes. Mostly locals heading home from late shifts like mine. But 15 minutes went by and not a single pair of headlights appeared. Then from behind me I saw them. 2 circles of yellow light growing larger. A truck moving slow. Relief flooded me, though part of me stayed tight in the chest. The pickup pulled alongside my car, engine rumbling deep and uneven. The driver rolled down his window. A man in his 50s maybe, with a sun-creased face and the easy drawl of someone used to strangers. "You all right there, miss?" he called out. "I think so," I said, forcing a smile. "Car died on me. I'm trying to get a tow, but no servicing," and he nodded. "Figures. These roads'll trap a signal faster than they trap heat. I got a shop not far from here if you want. Could tow you up there and take a look." The way he said it, too easy, too practiced, made something shift inside me. I couldn't explain it, but his tone felt rehearsed. "I appreciate it," I said carefully, "but I've got family nearby. They'll come get me." He leaned a little out of the window, peering at the empty road. "Family out here?" "Yeah," I lied. A pause stretched between us. Then he smiled, small, polite, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "All right then, you take care." He drove off slowly, tires crunching gravel. I watched until the red glow of his taillights vanished around the bend. I exhaled. My hands were trembling, but I laughed under my breath. "See, Sophia? Not every stranger's a killer." That's what I told myself, until I saw the headlights again. The same truck, same yellow lights. At first, I thought maybe he'd realized I needed real help and turned around. But the longer he sat there, engine idling, lights trained on the back of my car, the faster my pulse kicked. "Okay," I whispered, "no panic, just think." I locked the doors. My fingers brushed the keys still in the ignition, but starting the car wasn't an option. The battery was gone. The truck door creaked open. I froze. Through the rearview mirror, I saw a shape, tall, broad-shouldered, step out into the glow of the headlights. He didn't call out this time. Didn't wave. Just stood there staring toward my car. I grabbed my phone again, still no service. My breath hitched, and I knew sitting there was the worst thing I could do. I remembered my dad teaching me to drive when I was 16. "If something feels wrong, trust it," he'd said. "The road will always be there. You just get yourself out first." So I did. I pushed the door open quietly, grabbed my bag, and slipped into the darkness. The tall grass brushed my jeans as I ran toward the woods. Behind me came a shout, faint but sharp. "Hey, you don't have to run." I didn't look back. My sneakers pounded the dirt shoulder, my breath coming in gasps. I hit the tree line and ducked between the trunks, pulling out my phone again. 1 bar, thank God. I dialed 911. The dispatcher answered on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency? My car broke down, I panted. There's a man. He followed me. I think he's still out there. Please send someone. Stay on the line, ma'am. Can you describe your location? Somewhere off Ridge Road near the turn for Maple Hollow, I said, voice shaking. The dispatcher's tone stayed steady. We've got units on the way. Stay hidden, stay quiet. I crouched behind a fallen log, phone pressed to my ear, trying to listen for movement. I could hear twigs snapping in the dark, slow and deliberate. 10 minutes stretched like an hour. Then I saw flashing red and blue through the trees. The man's truck lights flickered once, then went dark. When the officers reached me, I could barely speak. One of them, Officer Hale, shined a flashlight down the road. My car sat where I'd left it, engine still running. Driver's door open. They found footprints, his, mine, both leading toward the woods. His prints stopped halfway in. The rest disappeared into nothing. They never found him.
For a week, I couldn't sleep.
Every sound outside my window, every passing car made my stomach twist. The police came back twice to take follow-up statements. They were kind, but I could tell they didn't expect to find him. They said he was likely a drifter, maybe someone looking for trouble who got scared off when I ran. But something about it stuck in my head. The way he'd said, I got a shop nearby. The way he'd looked past me, not at me, like he was scanning for something else. My mom wanted me to stay with her for a while. I did. Her house was small, warm, filled with the smell of cinnamon candles and safety. But even there, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had seen me, picked me out of the dark like I was meant to be on that road that night. At work, people tried to act normal. Carol hugged me when I came back and said, "You're lucky, Sophia. Most people don't get a warning like that." Lucky. I heard that word a lot. Still, the nightmares came. The sound of gravel under boots. The sight of those headlights burning holes in the dark. A detective called me 2 weeks later. They'd found tire marks near an abandoned property off Ridge Road, but nothing else. No license plate, no trace. Sometimes they just move on, he said gently. It's not personal. But it had felt personal. It still did. A month later, I moved. New place, new route to work. I told myself it was time to stop living scared. It was late September when I first heard the knock. Soft, rhythmic. I was home alone. My roommate had gone to her boyfriend's place. The clock read 11:47. I froze, every muscle locking in place. The knock came again. 3 times. I tiptoed to the peephole. No one. Just darkness and the faint glimmer of porch light catching on wet pavement. I waited. Nothing. Maybe kids, I thought. Maybe nothing at all. But when I opened the door the next morning, there were footprints, large, mud-caked, leading from the driveway to my door and back again. I called the police. They checked the area, said the prints had been washed out by rain before they could cast them. Could be anyone, one of them said. But I knew the truth. The shape of the boot tread looked the same as the prints by my car that night. After that, I stopped walking alone. I parked closer to the diner. I carried pepper spray everywhere. But more than anything, I started watching people. Their tone, their eyes, their patterns. Years have passed since that night, and I still think about it every time I drive home after dark. They never found the man or the truck. Maybe he's out there somewhere, maybe not. But sometimes I catch my reflection in the rearview mirror and realize something changed in me that night. I don't scare easy anymore, but I don't trust easy either. I learned to listen to that quiet voice inside, the one that tells you, this isn't right. You don't argue with it. You don't explain it away. You just go. Because I'm alive, because I ran. Every so often I'll drive past that same stretch of Ridge Road. The grass is taller now. The mailbox is rusted. My old car's long gone, replaced by something newer, steadier. But when the wind picks up through those trees, it sounds like footsteps. And I can still see those headlights in my mind, staring, waiting. I don't hate that memory anymore. It reminds me that fear sometimes is just instinct trying to save your life. No matter how polite the danger looks, no matter how normal the moment feels, when something deep inside you whispers, run, listen. Safety isn't about being fearless. It's about respecting the fear that's trying to keep you alive. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I left Rick's place, the air outside colder than I expected. We'd spent the evening fixing the old fence behind his barn, then fell into the couch for a late-night football game and a couple of beers. My hands still smelled like cedar and engine oil, a reminder that I'd promised myself this would be an early night and, as usual, broke that promise. Rick lived out past the county line, and my route home took me through a stretch of rural Kentucky road that cut through miles of farmland, black fields on either side, endless barbed wire fences, no streetlights for 10 miles at a time. The only sound was the hum of my old Ford's engine and the rhythmic slap of gravel against the undercarriage. I remember thinking how peaceful it felt, the kind of quiet you don't get in the city, just me, the road, and a sky full of stars so clear you could almost reach out and grab them. My headlights swept over a possum crossing, a mailbox leaning sideways, a sign half rusted that read, Barton Hollow, 7 miles. That was when I saw the lights. 2 dim, pulsing red dots ahead, like the hazard blinkers of a stranded car. They looked small at first, distant, harmless. But as I drew closer, they painted the road in flashes of red and shadow, breaking the stillness that had settled over me. At first, my brain ran on autopilot. Someone might be stuck, maybe hit a deer. You stop to help, that's what decent people do out here. So I slowed down, rolled my window down halfway and leaned toward the glass. A silver sedan sat half in a ditch, its nose buried in mud, steam curling from the hood. A woman stepped into my headlights, waving frantically. She wore a heavy coat, hair tangled, face pale and desperate. "Hey, please, can you stop?" she shouted. "My husband's hurt." "I don't have a phone." I put the truck in park and leaned out. "You okay, ma'am? What happened?" She came closer, her breath clouding in the cold. "We swerved to miss a deer. He's still inside. Please, I can't move him." Something in her voice made me hesitate. Not fear exactly, more like strain. Like she was saying what she thought she should say. I glanced toward the ditch but couldn't see anyone in the driver's seat. Just an empty shape behind the fogged windshield. That was when I heard it, a crunch of gravel behind me. I looked into the rearview mirror. A shape was crouched low near my tailgate, A man's face half covered in dirt, eyes locked on mine through the reflection. My stomach dropped. The woman saw me look. Her expression changed instantly. Panic, not at me, but for me. "Don't get out," she said sharply, her tone snapping like a whip. It wasn't a plea. It was a warning. Every instinct screamed at me. I slammed the gear into drive and floored it. My tires spun, throwing mud before catching traction. I shot forward, swerving around her as the man lunged toward the door handle. His hand smacked the glass, leaving a print in the dew. The truck fishtailed hard before straightening out. In my mirror, I saw the woman sprint into the dark field, her voice cutting through the night, but I couldn't make out the words. Then they were gone. The ditch, the car, the blinking lights swallowed by distance. I didn't slow down until I hit the county highway 10 miles later. My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. I told myself I'd go straight to the police station in Lexington, that I wouldn't even go home first. But when I pulled into the lot, hands trembling, the story sounded insane even in my head. Still, I reported it. They took notes, promised to check it out. I drove home watching my mirrors the whole way. That night I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that woman's face, how quickly fear had turned into warning. The next morning, my phone rang at 8:17. It was Deputy Collins from the sheriff's office. "Mr. Mason, we went out there first thing. You weren't imagining things." My heart thudded. "What did you find?" He sighed. "Tire tracks, footprints, broken taillight. Couple of spots in the field we're having forensics dig up. Looks like graves, shallow ones. Graves." The word hit like a hammer. "Any sign of the car?" "None. No debris, no plates, nothing. But the soil's fresh. You did good calling it in." I spent the rest of that day trying to shake it off, but it clung to me. Every errand felt hollow. At the grocery store, the hum of the freezer aisle made me flinch. At the gas station, the sight of a silver sedan made my stomach twist. That evening, Rick stopped by after hearing about it from his brother, who worked in dispatch. "Hell, Dan, you could have been another name on the news," he said, setting a six-pack on my counter. "They're saying it's the same stretch where folks have gone missing before." "Before?" He nodded grimly. 3 last year. Travelers, mostly. Cops figured accidents or people just taking off. Guess not. We sat in silence for a long minute. The beer tasted like metal. "I keep thinking about her," I said finally. "The woman. She told me not to get out. She saved me." Rick leaned back, eyes narrowed. "You sure she wasn't part of it?" I wanted to say yes. But the truth was, I didn't know. That night, sleep came in fits. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Around 3 a.m., I woke to a car slowing outside. Headlights crawled across my wall and stopped. I held my breath. After a long moment, the engine revved and faded into the distance. When morning came, I found fresh tire marks at the edge of my driveway. 2 days later, I drove back to Barton Hollow. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe guilt. I needed to see the place in daylight. The police tape fluttered weakly in the wind, marking a patch of churned dirt near the field. I stood there for a while, the silence thick. Birds had returned to the fence posts, oblivious to what the ground hid beneath them. That's when I noticed the woman. She was standing by the tree line about 50 yards away, wearing the same heavy coat. My chest seized. "Hey!" I called, stepping toward her. She didn't move. The wind stirred her hair across her face. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Still nothing. Then she turned. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate. And she smiled. It wasn't the look of someone relieved to be found. It was knowing. I blinked and she was gone. I ran to where she'd been standing. Only footprints faint, leading into the trees, then gone. Driving home, my mind spiraled between logic and dread. Maybe trauma had my imagination running wild. Maybe she'd been real. Maybe she wanted to warn me again. That night, someone knocked on my door. It was Deputy Collins. "Evening, Mr. Mason. Mind if I come in?" He held a manila folder. Inside were photos, crime scene shots, evidence bags. We dug up 3 sites. 2 sets of remains so far. One's recent, female, mid-30s. The other's older, still running IDs. I swallowed hard. "The woman I saw," he nodded. "We think she might have been one of them." Weeks passed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something from that road had followed me home. My dreams were filled with headlights, flashing red lights, the crunch of gravel. I stopped driving at night altogether. One afternoon, I came home from work and found my front door ajar. My first thought was burglary, but nothing was taken. Instead, there was a folded note on the kitchen counter. It read, "Thank you for not stopping. No signature. No explanation." I called Collins immediately. He brought a team to dust for prints, none found. "You sure you locked up?" he asked. "I always lock up." Then whoever left this knew how to get in without breaking in. Maybe someone you know? The thought made me sick. For days I carried the note in my wallet, like proof that the nightmare was still real. Rick told me to get cameras installed, but even that didn't help. The cameras caught nothing. Just the wind, stray dogs, and my own reflection coming home late. Then one night I saw her again. This time in my backyard by the edge of the woods. Same coat, same pale face. She didn't move, didn't speak. Just raised a hand slowly as if pointing behind me. I spun around. Nothing there. When I turned back, she was gone again. I started sleeping with the lights on. A month later, the sheriff's office called. They'd identified the bodies. One was a woman named Ellen Price, missing 3 months, married to a man named George Price. He was a suspect in her disappearance, but he'd vanished too. The name hit me like a bullet. I'd seen that name before, on an old mailbox along Route 14, a half-mile from where the wreck had been staged. That night I couldn't stay in the house. I got in my truck and drove. The road stretched ahead, empty as ever, the same darkness pressing in. When I reached the turnoff to Barton Hollow, I slowed. The ditch was overgrown now. No tape, no signs, just quiet. For a moment I thought I saw movement, a flicker of red in the distance, but it was just my own brake lights reflecting off a road sign. I sat there with the engine idling, gripping the wheel. "Thank you," I whispered, though I wasn't sure to whom. The woman, the ghost, or my own better judgment. Then I turned the truck around and drove home. I haven't taken that road since. Sometimes when the night gets too quiet, I still hear her voice in my head, sharp and urgent. Don't get out. Evil doesn't always look like danger. It often wears the mask of desperation. Trust your instincts, even when kindness feels like obligation. In a world where good intentions can be used as traps, survival sometimes depends on knowing when not to stop. People always think long-haul trucking is about freedom. Open skies, good music, and the hum of the engine underneath your boots. Maybe it is for some folks. For me, it's more like living between radio stations. Always halfway to somewhere else. Always missing something you can't name. I've been hauling freight for 20 years. Electronics mostly. TVs, monitors, gaming systems. The kind of stuff that costs a fortune but doesn't weigh much. It was early January, right after a snowstorm swept across the Dakotas. The kind of night where the air feels sharp enough to slice through denim. Dispatch gave me a route from Minneapolis down to Denver, about 1,100 miles, and told me to take my time. The load was insured, but not urgent. I left before sundown, rolling through empty fields buried in snow. The sky turned black quick, swallowing everything except the thin ribbon of highway in front of me. The CB crackled with a few voices, truckers swapping jokes, talking weather, complaining about DOT checkpoints. But by midnight, it was just static. Most folks pull over by then. I don't. I like the night. Fewer cars, fewer distractions, just me and the hum of diesel. Still, there's a loneliness that creeps in after midnight. The road starts to feel endless, like you're driving through space. I turned up the heater and the radio, but it didn't help. My coffee had gone cold. My eyelids were heavy. When I saw the blue rest area sign, "Next right 1 mile," it felt like an invitation. The place was dead quiet. A single pickup sat far off by the trees, headlights dim, but still burning. I parked my rig under the yellow glow of the lamppost, climbed down and stretched. The cold bit through my gloves instantly. I stamped my boots on the pavement, grabbed $1 from my pocket, and went for the vending machine. The coffee tasted like rust and burnt sugar, but it was hot. I leaned against the machine, listening to the wind whistle through the trees. No sound of cars, no engines, just that eerie stillness you get in the middle of nowhere. When I came back out, someone was standing behind my trailer. At first, I figured he was another driver checking his tires or hitch, but he didn't move. Just stood there, half in the shadows, coat collar turned up, face hidden. "Hey," I called out. No answer. Something inside me, that old animal sense, told me to get back in the cab. I did. Locked both doors. Sat there watching through the mirror. He stayed still for a minute, then started walking, went slow, went toward the passenger side. My pulse spiked. I laid on the horn, long and loud. The guy froze, then sprinted off into the trees, disappearing into the dark. I sat there shaking, heart pounding like an engine misfire. After a minute, I grabbed the mic. "Breaker 19, I said. Anybody got ears near I-29 southbound? Got a suspicious guy at the Mile 84 rest stop." A few truckers answered, nobody nearby. I waited a while, engine idling, then decided to roll out. I figured maybe he was some drifter, maybe high, maybe just lost. But my gut said otherwise. My gut said, get moving. The highway looked the same as before, empty and endless. Snow kicked up behind my trailer like smoke. The clock on the dash said 2:17 a.m. I tried to focus on the road, but my eyes kept drifting to the mirrors. Every time the wind caught a reflection, I thought I saw movement. Paranoia, I told myself. Just road fatigue. Still, I couldn't shake it. My headlights carved two narrow tunnels into the dark, and beyond that, nothing. Every shadow looked like a man standing on the shoulder. Every flicker looked like a signal. After about an hour, I decided to pull into the next rest area. I figured I'd grab another coffee, check the load, maybe catch some air. The place was brighter than the last one. Newer building, more lights, but just as empty. I climbed down and walked around the trailer. My breath hung in the air, thick and white. That's when I saw it. Muddy handprints, smeared across the back doors. High up, too high for someone standing on the ground. I froze. My flashlight beam trembled as I moved it closer. The prints were long, streaked downward, like someone had been hanging on and lost their grip. The mud was fresh, still wet despite the cold. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. I backed away, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved. No sounds except the wind. My mind started spinning. Had that guy from the last stop been on my trailer the whole time? Riding along in the freezing dark, I didn't even want to think about it. I got back in the cab, locked up again, and hit the road faster than before. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my coffee. On the radio, I caught some chatter about a state trooper who'd found a body near an old rest stop 2 days earlier. They didn't have details, but I turned the volume down anyway. The road stretched ahead, black and endless. Every time my trailer rattled, I imagined something banging from inside. Every mile felt heavier. By sunrise, I was somewhere in Nebraska. I hadn't stopped once. My eyes were bloodshot, and the heater was barely keeping up with the cold. I pulled into a truck stop for fuel, parked by the pump, and just sat there staring at the steering wheel. A young attendant came out, wrapped in a hoodie. "Morning," he said, stamping his feet. "Rough night?" "You could say that." He started filling the tank, glancing at the back of the trailer. "What's all that mud from?" "Wish I knew," I said. He didn't push it, just nodded slowly like he'd heard stranger things. I grabbed breakfast inside and stale pancakes, watery coffee, and tried to convince myself it was over. Probably just some vagrant who climbed up looking for a ride, fell off after a few miles. That's what I told myself. But the image of those handprints wouldn't leave me. Later that afternoon, a state patrol cruiser pulled into the lot. The trooper came inside, tall guy with mirrored sunglasses despite the clouds. He walked straight to my booth. "You the driver of that white Kenworth outside?" "Yeah," I said. "Something wrong?" He held up his badge. "You passed through the I-29 rest area around 2 this morning?" I nodded, heart thudding. "We had a call about a suspicious person out there," he said. "Fits the description of a man we've been looking for. Escaped mental patient from Sioux Falls. Dangerous. May have tried to hitch a ride." My stomach dropped. "You saying he could have been on my truck?" "Hard to say," the officer replied. "But if you see or hear anything unusual, call it in." He left after that, but his words sat heavy. Escaped mental patient. dangerous. The idea that he might have been inches from me for miles made my skin crawl. I checked my trailer again before leaving. The handprints had frozen solid now, crusted in gray ice. I stared at them a long time before climbing back into the cab. Then I locked the doors, again, and rolled south. Night fell early that day, and with it came the fog. The snow had stopped, but the world looked washed out, just gray sky and darker ground. My headlights barely cut through. The road curved endlessly, a black ribbon leading nowhere. I kept the CB off. Didn't want to hear anyone, didn't want to talk, just wanted the miles behind me. But sometime after 9, I started feeling that same pressure in my chest, like eyes on me. The mirrors showed nothing, but I couldn't shake it. At a way station outside North Platte, I pulled over to check again. I opened the back doors this time, half expecting to see something or someone inside, but it was empty. Boxes strapped tight, everything in order. Still, I caught myself whispering, "You're not back there, are you?" When I shut the doors, I noticed new marks in the grime, faint streaks like fingerprints along the latch. I didn't even check the ground. I just got back in the truck and kept driving. By midnight, exhaustion hit hard. I started seeing things in the snowbanks, shapes, movement, faces maybe. I slapped myself to stay awake. The road felt alive, breathing under the tires. I pulled into a small diner off Highway 83 just to get out. Inside, the waitress looked half asleep. "Coffee?" she asked. "Please," I said, sitting at the counter. She poured me a cup and nodded toward the window. "That your rig out there?" "Yeah." "Why?" "Saw someone walk behind it when you pulled in," she said casually. "Thought it was you?" I felt every hair on my neck rise. "You sure?" "Pretty sure," she said, frowning. Didn't look like a trucker, though. No coat. I ran outside, scanning the lot. Empty, just wine-swirling snow across the pavement. I circled the trailer. Nothing. No footprints even, like the snow had swallowed them. I didn't sleep that night. I just drove. The road and I were one long stretch of fear. I made Denver just after dawn, dropped the trailer at the yard, signed the papers, and tried not to think about anything. The dispatcher handed me a new manifest, but I told him I needed rest. He nodded, said I looked like hell. He wasn't wrong. That night I checked into a cheap motel off I-70. Peeling wallpaper, humming radiator, smells like cigarettes. I took the longest shower of my life, crawled into bed, and told myself it was over. Around 3 in the morning, I woke to a noise. A faint thump from outside. Then another. I went to the window and pulled the curtain. My truck sat under the streetlight, quiet. But the back door, the same trailer I'd dropped earlier, was slightly open. I threw on my boots, grabbed the tire iron from under the seat, and stepped into the cold. My breath fogged the air. The lot was empty except for my rig and 2 other semis. The door creaked as I pulled it shut. Then I saw them, more prints, fresh this time, in the dust along the handle. Same shape, same size. I reported it to the yard the next morning. They ran cameras, checked the area. Nothing. No sign of anyone, no footprints in the snow. The cops said maybe kids messing around. Maybe. But I knew better. I knew someone had been there. Watching, following, waiting. I quit long-haul trucking a few months later. Took local routes instead. I tell myself it's for family, for health, for shorter hours. But the truth is, I still see those handprints in my dreams. Every time I pull into a dark rest stop, I look twice. Every time I hear a thump behind me, my heart races. The road still calls to me sometimes, but I've learned something out there in the cold. The highway's not empty. It never is. No matter how experienced or prepared you think you are, always trust your instincts. Sometimes the danger isn't the road, the weather, or the load you carry. It's the silence, the stillness, the sense that something just isn't right. Those feelings exist to protect you. In life, as on the highway, ignoring them might cost you more than a night's sleep. It might cost you everything. I've never liked long country drives at night, but sometimes you don't have a choice. That Friday, my coworker Ben had invited a few of us to his cabin to celebrate finishing a big project. His place sat miles off the main road. No cell service, no neighbors, just pine trees and stars. We grilled, drank a few beers, and told old work stories around the fire. By midnight, the laughter had faded into yawns, and everyone was either asleep or staying over. I decided to head home. I told myself I'd be fine. The air was cool, the sky clear, and I wanted my own bed. Ben warned me, watch the deer on Route 12, they love jumping out of nowhere. I promised I'd drive slow. The first few miles were peaceful, just the hum of tires and the rhythmic flash of white road lines. My gas gauge hovered near empty, but I figured I could make it to the next town. Then the road narrowed, the trees thickened, and the night pressed in. No streetlights, no houses, just black forest swallowing both sides of the car. That's when I saw her. At first she was just a blur caught in my headlights, arms flailing, coat soaked, hair plastered to her face. I eased off the gas and rolled my window down a crack. "You okay, ma'am?" I called. She stumbled toward me, breathless. "Please," she said, voice trembling. "My car broke down. I've been walking for hours. I just need to get to town." Something about her eyes unsettled me. They kept darting over my shoulder, toward the dark woods behind her. "Where's your car?" I asked. She pointed vaguely down the road, a few miles back. I didn't want to stay there. "Please, can you drive me? Just to the gas station." I hesitated. She looked genuinely terrified, but not the kind of scared that comes from being stranded. It was deeper, like she'd seen something. I said, "I can call for help when I get signal." Her face changed instantly. "No, don't call anyone. Please just drive." That's when I saw the footprints. 2 sets of them, muddy and fresh, one leading from the woods to where she stood, another heading back. My stomach tightened. Before I could react, she screamed, "He's still here!" and ran into the open field beside the road. Then something moved in the trees. A tall shadow, fast and deliberate, stepping into the edge of my headlights. Instinct took over. I slammed the gas and tore down the road, my heart hammering so hard I could barely breathe. I didn't stop until I reached the main highway. I barely slept. My mind replayed every second, the woman's face, her voice, the shadow. By dawn, I convinced myself it must have been something explainable. Maybe she was running from someone, maybe I'd overreacted. Still, I couldn't shake the thought that she needed help. So around 10 a.m., I called the county sheriff. The dispatcher sounded skeptical but sent a patrol to check. 2 hours later, an officer called back. "Sir, we found a car matching what you described. Silver sedan, nose down in a ditch off Route 12. Was she there?" I asked. No sign of anyone. Car was empty. Doors unlocked, keys still inside. "We'll keep looking." The officer paused. "You did the right thing, leaving when you felt unsafe." I wanted to believe him, but something about his tone said he didn't buy my story completely. That night, I sat on my porch staring into the dark fields. Every rustle of wind made me flinch. At one point, I thought I heard crying somewhere far off, but when I stepped into the yard, it was silent again. 2 days later, I stopped at a diner near the highway for breakfast. The waitress, an older woman with silver hair, noticed me staring at the TV above the counter. A news segment was playing. Authorities continue searching for a missing woman whose car was found abandoned on Route 12. I froze. It was her. The same face, same coat. The reporter said her name was Rachel Cooper, 32, missing since Friday night. The waitress caught my expression. "You know her?" I hesitated. "I saw her that night." Her eyebrows lifted. "Then you better tell somebody." That afternoon, I met with the sheriff in person. He took my statement again, slower this time. "So she told you not to call for help?" he asked. "Yeah, she seemed scared, like she was hiding from someone." He leaned back in his chair. "We found more footprints near the car. 2 sets, like you said, but the second pair, smaller, barefoot, in that freezing rain." The sheriff said they'd search the woods again. I left his office shaken, wondering if I'd escaped something worse than I realized. A week passed. I tried moving on, but every night the same dream returned. The woman's scream, the shadow stepping from the trees. Then one evening, Ben called. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Cops were by my place this morning. They found something near the creek." "What was it?" "Just an old campsite. But get this, there was a phone charger and a woman's shoe." I felt the room tilt. "Rachel?" "Maybe. They didn't say." That night I drove back toward the area. I don't know why, maybe guilt, maybe curiosity. The forest road was muddy, the same one I'd flown down that night. When I reached the spot where I'd seen her, I pulled over. The rain had started again, soft and cold. I stepped out with a flashlight. The field was quiet except for the hiss of drizzle on grass. I almost convinced myself it was over, until I saw fresh footprints again. Bare ones. They led from the ditch straight to where I stood, then vanished. A whisper drifted through the trees, faint but unmistakable. Don't call for help. The investigation fizzled after 2 weeks. No body, no suspect, no answers. The sheriff figured Rachel ran off or met someone out there. But I couldn't let it go. One night I got an envelope in my mailbox, no return address. Inside was a photo taken from behind me, showing my truck parked on Route 12. Scrawled on the back, "You should have listened." I moved to the city soon after, traded country roads for noise and streetlights. Still, sometimes when I'm driving late and the gas gauge dips low, I catch myself glancing at the shoulder, half expecting to see her standing there again, arms waving, eyes wide with fear. And every time I do, I keep driving. Instinct is a voice older than reason. When it whispers, listen. Compassion is noble, but blind trust in the dark can cost more than courage. It can cost survival. Some cries for help are warnings meant to save you. I've worked night deliveries for almost 6 years. It's quiet work, pays the bills, and gives me time to think. The roads at night are usually my kind of peace. No traffic, no calls from the boss, just me, the hum of the van, and the glow of the dashboard. But that peace turns fragile when you spend too many nights alone on the road. Sometimes it feels like the dark is listening. That Friday started like any other. I'd clocked in around 5 at Toning, Pine Bite Eats, a small delivery hub tucked behind a gas station at the edge of town. We serviced all the mountain cabins scattered through the valley. Around 11:30 p.m., I got a late-night order, chili and cornbread from a Marty's Diner, one of our regulars. The address looked new, 72 Hollow Creek Road. "Never heard of that one," I muttered. Tina, our dispatcher, glanced at her screen. "Customer must be way out. Says leave on porch. You okay taking it?" "Yeah," I said. "Last run anyway." The bag smelled good, still warm. I loaded it up, grabbed a thermos of coffee, and set off. The GPS showed a 40-minute drive into the backcountry. The road twisted past pine forests and creeks that glittered faintly in the moonlight. The air grew colder, the fog thicker. My cell signal dropped to a single bar, then nothing. I kept driving. That's when I saw it, a tall figure standing dead center in the road ahead, half hidden by fog. I slowed down, rolled the window an inch. "Hey, you waiting for food?" No answer. I blinked, and the figure was gone. Just fog swirling in my headlights. My pulse kicked up. Probably just the mist, I told myself. But my gut said otherwise. A mile later, the GPS announced I'd reached the address. A dark cabin sat off to the right. No lights, no cars, nothing. The porch sagged under years of rain. I grabbed the bag, walked up the steps, and froze. Carved into the door was something sharp where the words, "Leave it where you found me." A chill ran through me so deep it hurt. I dropped the food, stumbled back to the van, and floored it all the way down the mountain. When I finally reached the main highway, my hands were still shaking. I pulled into the Sunoco 24-hour to breathe. The clerk, an older guy named Jim, eyed me. "You look like you saw a ghost," he said. "Maybe I did," I muttered, trying to laugh it off. Back at the depot, the clock read 1:12 a.m. Tina was logging orders. I handed her my keys. "I'm done." She frowned. "You didn't mark the delivery complete." Yeah, the GPS froze. She turned her monitor toward me. "That address you went to, Hollow Creek, it's not in the system anymore." "What do you mean?" "It vanished after you left. There's no order under your route number." I pulled up my phone. The delivery receipt was gone too, replaced by an old archived ticket dated 2014. Under delivery address, it read, "Hollow Creek Cabin, abandoned after fatal accident." Tina gave a low whistle. "Weird glitch, huh?" I didn't answer. That night I dreamed of the figure again, standing in the middle of the road, whispering in a voice I couldn't quite hear. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. I stopped by the library figuring maybe there'd be something about Hollow Creek in old newspapers. The local history clerk, Mrs. Lanning, found it within minutes. She slid a microfilm printout toward me. Headline: Local family killed in delivery crash. Driver never found. The article dated back 10 years. It said a food delivery van lost control during a storm, crashed into a cabin off Hollow Creek Road, killing the homeowner and his daughter instantly. The driver's body was never recovered. I swallowed hard. Was his name Carlos? Mrs. Lanning shook her head. No, it says David Martinez. Close. Too close. That night I sat in my van outside my apartment, staring at the fog rolling down from the hills. My phone pinged. No caller ID, just a notification from the delivery app. Hollow Creek Cabin, delivery incomplete. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. My headlights flickered twice, then steadied. For a moment in the rearview mirror, I swore I saw someone sitting in the back seat. When I turned around, it was empty. By Sunday, I'd decided I couldn't ignore it. Whether it was a glitch, a prank, or something worse, I had to see that place in daylight. I left early morning, fog still heavy in the hollows. The road twisted the same way as before, though this time the GPS wouldn't even load. The trees seemed closer, like the forest was leaning in. When I reached the spot, there was no cabin, only a burned-out foundation swallowed by weeds. But something glinted near the ashes, a melted food bag. I picked it up, still half intact, and nearly dropped it when I saw my own handwriting on the sticker. Order 6427, Carlos R. I hadn't written that. I'd never used that number. A whisper brushed my ear. Leave it where you found me. I bolted back to the van, but the engine refused to start. The radio crackled alive with static. Through the static came a voice, low and broken. Delivery complete, finally. Then silence. The van roared to life, headlights blinding for a second before cutting off on their own. The next evening, Tina called. Hey, weird thing. The system marked your Hollow Creek delivery as completed. Time stamped 12:17 a.m. last night. I wasn't even out, I said. Well, it logged your vehicle ID. She paused. And the tip cleared. I quit that night. I couldn't keep driving those roads, not knowing what was out there or who might still be waiting. Sometimes when the fog rolls into town, I hear the faint chime of my old delivery app notification. New order available, Hollow Creek Cabin. I never accept it. But part of me wonders if someone else will. Not every unfinished task is yours to complete. Some places and some people belong to the past, and trying to deliver what was lost can trap you there too. Curiosity may push you down dark roads, but wisdom is knowing when to turn around. It's strange how quiet a city can feel when the night finally gives up trying to pretend it's alive. I'd always liked walking home after late nights. The hum of distant traffic, the smell of rain on pavement, the way every sound feels sharper when the streets are empty. That night, though, something felt off. I was leaving my friend Caleb's apartment after helping him move furniture and splitting a six-pack. Nothing unusual. I wasn't drunk, just tired. The streets around downtown were empty except for the occasional passing bus, its windows reflecting slices of orange light. It was close to midnight when I turned down Maple Avenue, a long stretch that cut straight to my apartment building. The air was cool, my breath forming pale clouds in front of me. My footsteps echoed off the buildings, bouncing back like I wasn't alone. Every streetlight I passed hummed softly, a low electric buzz, but halfway down the block one started to flicker. Underneath that flickering light stood a man. He was facing away from me, head slightly tilted like he was looking at something across the street. I slowed my pace, pretending to check my phone. His clothes were dark and a long coat, maybe a hood. I couldn't tell from that distance. For some reason, I felt like I shouldn't get closer. My brain whispered the kind of warning you don't ignore, so I crossed to the opposite sidewalk and kept walking. That's when the light stopped flickering. It went steady, humming louder. I glanced back once and then he was gone, just gone. I told myself he probably walked off when I wasn't looking. People disappear into alleyways all the time. Still, I sped up, trying to shake the unease crawling up my spine. But a few blocks later, I heard it, footsteps behind me. Soft, dragging steps perfectly matching mine. When I slowed, they slowed. When I sped up, they did too. I turned a corner sharply, half expecting to catch whoever it was, but the street was empty. My reflection in a darkened shop window stared back at me. Tired eyes, messy hair, nervous smile. "You're fine," I muttered. "Just tired." By the time I reached my apartment building, I had almost convinced myself nothing was wrong. I fumbled for my keys, hand shaking slightly. That's when a voice whispered right beside my ear, close enough that I felt the breath. "You dropped something." I froze. My house keys were already in my hand. I turned around, no one. The street light above my door flickered twice, then went completely dark. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the windows made my heart jump. When dawn finally came, I laughed at myself for being paranoid. Morning light has a way of erasing fear, at least until the next sunset. Work that day dragged. I work at a repair shop just outside the city. Fixing phones, laptops, the kind of job that's quiet enough to make you think too much. Around noon, Caleb texted, "Caleb, you get home all right last night?" Me, "Yeah, why?" Caleb, "Thought I saw you talking to someone outside." That froze me. I didn't reply. I hadn't spoken to anyone. When I left work that evening, it was already dark. I told myself to take the bus this time. No more late-night walks. But somehow I ended up on the same street again. Maple Avenue, my mind rationalizing it as facing the fear. Halfway down the block, under that same streetlight, there was something small on the ground. My curiosity got the better of me. I crouched down and saw it was a Harry keychain. A cheap metal tag with the number 208 engraved on it. My apartment number. I stood there for a moment, cold spreading through my chest. I didn't drop it. I'd never owned anything like that. I pocketed it, walked home fast, and locked every bolt behind me. That night I heard faint tapping sounds, not from outside, but from inside the walls. Like someone dragging a nail slowly down the drywall. I tried to find the source, but couldn't. Around 3 a.m., the sound stopped. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Unknown. "You shouldn't have taken what's not yours." I showed Caleb the text the next day. He laughed it off. "Man, it's probably some scammer or prank. Just block the number." I wanted to believe him. I deleted the message, but unease stuck with me like static. That evening, when I got home, I noticed something wrong. My front door was unlocked. I was sure I'd locked it that morning. Nothing seemed stolen, but the air felt disturbed, like someone had stood in the middle of my living room for hours breathing. Later, I decided to take a shower, trying to wash away the tension. The steam fogged up the mirror, and as I wiped it with my hand, I froze. On the mirror, faint but visible, were finger streaks. 2 words written in the condensation: "Drop it." I stepped back, heart racing. My apartment door was locked now, the deadbolt secure. How the hell could anyone have been inside? I grabbed the keychain from my pocket and threw it in the trash. That night, I barely blinked, sitting on the couch with the TV volume low. Around 1 a.m., my bathroom light turned on by itself. Then, that voice again, low and steady, like it was coming from just behind my ear. "You dropped something." The next day, I took a different route to work, avoiding Maple Avenue entirely. But fear doesn't care about directions, and it follows. At the shop, my boss asked if I was okay. "You look like hell, Daniel." "Didn't sleep," I said. "Somebody's been screwing with me." He chuckled. "City life will do that." When I got home, I found an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a photo of me, walking home last night, my face half lit by headlights. On the back, "Still got your keys?" That night, I couldn't stay in the apartment. I packed a bag and drove to Caleb's. He laughed at my panic but let me crash on his couch. Around 2 a.m., while I was half asleep, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside his apartment. Slow. Heavy. Then, the sound of something metal scraping across the floor. Caleb's dog started whining. The next morning, Caleb's front doorknob had a fresh scratch mark on it, like a key had been dragged across the metal. A week later, I finally decided to report everything to the police. The officer at the desk listened politely but didn't write much. "Sounds like a prank," he said. "You sure you're not imagining things?" But that night proved I wasn't. When I got home, my apartment door was wide open. Inside, every light was off, except the one under the flickering streetlight outside my window. It was strobing in that same uneven rhythm I remembered, and beneath it through the glass I saw him. The man, standing perfectly still, face hidden by his hood. In his hand he held the Kelmy keychain wound, the one I'd thrown away. I called 911, but before they could answer, the light went out. Total darkness. Then, whisper, inches from my ear. "You dropped something." When the cops arrived, they found my apartment empty. The window was open, curtains swaying. No footprints, no sign of forced entry. Just a single keychain lying in the middle of the floor. I moved out the next morning. To this day, whenever I pass an empty street under a flickering light, I still hear that voice. Not every shadow hides evil, but not every act of reason keeps you safe. Fear is often your body's way of telling you what logic refuses to accept. Always trust your instincts, especially when everything looks normal. The danger you ignore once might be the one that never lets you go. I've been driving long haul for close to 20 years, and the road still feels like home to me. I'm used to the hum of tires on asphalt, the steady drone of diesel, the way the sky stretches forever across the plains. When you spend enough time behind the wheel, the highway stops being a place you travel through and starts being a place you live in. That was the life I chose. My name's Der Logan, and this story happened on a bitter January night somewhere in the middle of Kansas. I'd left Kansas City just after sunset with a trailer full of auto parts bound for Denver. Dispatch wanted me there by noon the next day. The forecast called for snow out west, but for now the night was clear. Cold enough that the air stabbed at your lungs if you stepped outside, but the kind of cold that made the stars look like diamonds. I hadn't seen another vehicle for an hour. Out there, the plains stretch so far you feel like you're driving across an ocean made of grass. The only light came from my headlights in the faint red glow of my dashboard. The CB radio had been silent most of the night. I kept it on channel 19 out of habit. But after midnight, truckers are usually either asleep or too tired to talk. Then the static popped. A low hiss came through, followed by a faint voice. "Do you see me?" I frowned. "Say again, Breaker 19? Nothing but static. Probably some kid with a handheld messing around. It happens." I turned the squelch down and kept rolling. The road went on forever. Black asphalt framed by snow-covered fields, telephone poles flicking past like metronome ticks. Still, the voice stuck in my head. "Do you see me?" I didn't know why it bothered me, but it did. About 20 minutes later, a glimmer of light appeared ahead on the shoulder. As I got closer, I realized it was another truck. An older Peterbilt, maybe late 70s, parked with its hazards weakly flashing. The lights flickered like they were dying. I slowed down, instinctively reaching for the mic. "Breaker 19, you all right up there, driver?" I called. No answer. I tried again. Still silence. When you've been in this line of work as long as I have, you look out for your own. A breakdown in the middle of nowhere in that kind of cold can kill a man. I pulled onto the shoulder behind him and grabbed my flashlight. The air hit me like a hammer the moment I stepped out. The Peterbilt looked rough. Old paint, cracked mirrors, snow crusted on the steps. The driver's door was closed, but the engine was still running, coughing low like it hadn't been tuned in years. I climbed up the step and knocked on the door. No response. I pulled the handle. The door wasn't locked. Inside, the cab light was on. The driver's seat was empty. A thermos sat in the cup holder with steam still rising from it. On the dash lay a worn leather wallet and an open logbook. The seatbelt was unbuckled, hanging loose. "Hello?" I called, shining my light around. The sleeper berth was empty. No sign of struggle. No footprints leading away either. Just tire tracks and untouched snow. I felt a chill crawl up my neck that had nothing to do with the wind. Something about that still warm coffee hit me wrong. Whoever had been here couldn't have gone far. Maybe he'd stepped out to take a leak. Maybe he'd gone for help. But there were no buildings for miles. Just dark fields and fences buried in snow. I backed down the step, keeping my light on the tree line. The shadows looked deeper than they should have. For a moment I thought I saw movement, something pale shifting between the trees, but then it was gone. I told myself it was just the beam catching on the snow. I climbed into my own truck, locked both doors, and sat there with the engine idling. My hands were trembling slightly as I picked up the mic. "Breaker 19, I said, voice tight. "Anybody hear me out here near mile marker 212 on I-70 westbound? Got an abandoned rig, engine running, no driver." Static. Then faintly, "You shouldn't have stopped." My stomach dropped. I froze with the mic in my hand. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice shaking. Only the hiss of static answered. I dropped the mic, threw the rig into gear, and pulled back onto the highway. The road ahead was a long, dark ribbon cutting through white fields. I pushed the pedal harder than I should have, just wanting distance between me and that truck. My pulse thudded in my ears louder than the engine. I told myself it had to be some sick prank. Maybe another driver on a nearby channel messing with me. Maybe the guy from that truck had a second CB in the woods and thought it'd be funny. Still, my gut didn't buy it. I'd gone about 5 miles when the CB hissed again. "You shouldn't have stopped," the same voice whispered. Softer this time. Closer. Like it was coming from inside the cab. "Cut the crap," I barked, slamming the volume knob off. My palms were slick on the steering wheel. The road dipped slightly and my headlights caught a shape ahead. At first it looked like a deer. Then it moved, 2 legs, not 4. I hit the brakes. The tires screamed against the ice. Standing in the beam was a man. He was drenched from head to toe, water dripping off him, clothes clinging to his body. His skin looked gray in the light. And the jacket he wore, brown canvas with a torn sleeve, I'd seen it hanging on the seat in that abandoned truck. My heart nearly stopped. I slammed the horn and the sound tore through the night. The man didn't move, just stared at me, head tilted slightly like he was trying to recognize me. Then slowly he raised his arm and pointed down the road. That was enough. I threw the truck into reverse, backed up until my trailer straightened, then shifted to drive and swerved around him. My mirrors showed only empty highway after that. No man, no footprints, nothing. By the time I hit the next rest stop, my nerves were shot. I parked under the brightest light I could find, engine still running. I got out to breathe, my boots crunching on the snow. The world was silent except for the low rumble of idling engines from a couple of other trucks. I wasn't alone here, thank God. Inside the rest area, the fluorescent lights buzzed. A woman behind the counter looked up from her phone. "Rough night?" she asked. "You could say that," I said, grabbing a coffee. "You seen any other trucks stop through lately? Maybe an old Peterbilt, rust-colored?" She frowned, thinking. "There was one towed in last week after a wreck east of here." "Why?" I felt my chest tighten. "A wreck?" "Yeah, driver didn't make it," she said softly. "They say he lost control on the ice and flipped the cab into a ditch. Poor guy. Happened right near mile marker 212. The number hit me like a punch. I didn't say anything else. Just paid for my coffee and stepped outside. Snow was starting to fall again, light but steady. My headlights cast long spears of white through the flakes. I climbed into the cab and sat there staring at the CB mic. I didn't want to touch it, but I had to know. I turned the radio back on. Static filled the cab, soft and constant. For a long time, nothing happened, then, "You see me now?" I dropped the mic. My coffee spilled across the floor. Outside, through the blur of falling snow, I swore I saw someone standing by the tail of my trailer. The outline of a man, shoulders hunched, head bowed. I blinked and he was gone. I left the rest area before dawn. The snow had stopped, leaving a pale mist that hugged the ground. I drove without the radio on, without music, without anything but the sound of the engine and my own breathing. When I reached Denver, I dropped my load, signed the papers, and parked the rig at the yard. I sat there for a long time before shutting off the key. The silence was deafening. That night in my motel room, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that man, dripping, pointing, eyes hollow. I kept replaying it, wondering if I'd imagined it all. Stress, fatigue, the isolation of the road, and they can mess with your head. That's what I told myself. But a week later, I stopped at a diner off I-70 and overheard 2 drivers talking at the counter. "Crazy story," one said. They found a Peterbilt out near 212 again. Empty cab, engine running. Cops say the driver's rig was stolen and found miles away, doors open. No sign of him. I didn't say a word. I just paid my bill, walked out and climbed into my truck. Before I started the engine, I looked at the passenger seat. Lying there was an old wet leather wallet. I hadn't noticed it before. My hand started to shake. The CB crackled. "Do you see me?" That was the last time I ever drove that stretch of highway. Sometimes the road isn't empty, it remembers. Out there in the dark, where silence stretches farther than the horizon, you learn the value of trusting your instincts. When something feels wrong, it usually is. Curiosity may be part of human nature, but some things are better left alone. In life, as on the highway, not every call for help comes from the living, and not every silence means you're alone. It's funny how you can live somewhere for years and still not really see it until you're alone at night. I'd been working at Ruby's Diner since I was 19, just a small place off Highway 14, famous for our pancakes and bottomless coffee. I was 27 now, still there, still working the late shift that ran until 2 in the morning. Most nights, the world outside felt like an old photograph, quiet, washed out, and slightly crooked around the edges. My walk home usually took about 30 minutes if I stayed on the main road, but that route passed the empty lumberyard and a stretch of half-lit houses that always made me feel watched. The shortcut, a narrow alley between 2 abandoned brick warehouses, shaved in minutes off. It wasn't exactly safe-looking, but I'd walked it so many times I could picture every crack in the pavement. The air always smelled faintly of wet cement and old rain. That night I clocked out at 2:12 a.m. The diner's neon sign flickered as I stepped outside. It was drizzling, just enough to paint the asphalt in streaks of orange from the streetlights. I tugged my jacket tighter and started walking, my sneakers squeaking in the puddles. I thought about how I'd spend my day off tomorrow. Maybe sleep in, maybe finally fix the leaky faucet in the kitchen. The town was quiet except for the hum of a passing truck somewhere far off. I turned onto Cherry Avenue where the alley began. The rain made the world feel smaller, the sound of it bouncing off the brick walls like whispers. I remember glancing up. The clouds hung low, heavy, like they wanted to crush the rooftops. Halfway through I heard it, footsteps light but steady. I stopped. The sound stopped too. I turned around, nobody. Just the slick stretch of wet pavement and the faint orange glow reflecting off the puddles. I let out a shaky breath, told myself it was just my echo or maybe the drip of water from a drain pipe. I'd been up for 12 hours straight. My mind played tricks sometimes. I started walking again, faster this time, but the sound returned, a closer, quicker, matching me. I could hear breathing now, low and uneven, like someone trying not to be heard. My stomach tightened. The air seemed thicker. I spun around again, and that's when I saw it, a silhouette crouched against the wall near a dumpster, wide eyes catching the streetlight. I froze. Then instinct took over. I ran. My shoes splashed through puddles as I tore down the last stretch of the alley, my heart pounding so loud it drowned everything else out. I burst onto Maple Street gasping, clutching my bag to my chest. When I finally turned back, the figure hadn't moved. It stood perfectly still. No, not stood. It was posed. And as the light shifted, I saw the shine of molded plastic. A mannequin. But not just any mannequin. It was wearing a Ruby's Diner uniform. White shirt, red apron, name tag. My name tag. By the time I got home, I was shaking so hard I could barely get my keys into the door. I told myself it was a prank. Some kids, maybe someone from the diner messing around. But deep down, it didn't feel like that. The mannequin's face, blank, painted, frozen in a faint half smile, was burned into my mind. The next morning, I barely slept. When the sun came up, everything looked harmless again, like the night had just been a bad dream. Still, when I walked into work, I found myself scanning the parking lot, half expecting to see that same plastic figure leaning against the wall. Ruby noticed right away that something was off. "You look like hell, Ellie," she said, sliding me a coffee. "Rough night?" "Didn't sleep much," I said, trying to sound casual. She gave me a look but didn't press. Around noon, during the lunch rush, I caught sight of something that made my stomach drop. Through the front window across the street near the old pharmacy, there was a shape, tall, pale, standing in the shade. A mannequin. Same uniform, same red apron. I blinked hard. When I looked again, it was gone. By the end of my shift, I had convinced myself I was just exhausted, seeing things, maybe even dreaming with my eyes open. But as I clocked out that night, I noticed something strange. My name tag, the one I wore every shift, was missing from my apron. I checked my locker, my bag, even the counter, nothing. Lose something? I turned. It was Jake, the line cook. His voice always had this teasing edge. "My name tag," I said. "You haven't seen it, have you?" He shook his head. "Probably fell off somewhere. Don't sweat it." But I did sweat it. All the way home. This time I avoided the alley and took the long route. The streets were nearly empty, the rain gone but the air still damp. Every passing shadow made me flinch. When I reached my apartment, I locked the door, drew the curtains and checked them twice. I kept telling myself it couldn't follow me, that it wasn't even real. But at 3:17 a.m., when I got up to get water, I saw something through the gap in my curtains, a figure standing under the streetlight. A mannequin, and this one was wearing my missing name tag. I called the police the next morning. They sent an officer, a young guy named Henson, who looked too tired to care. I explained everything, the alley, the mannequin, the name tag. He wrote it all down, nodded occasionally, but I could tell he didn't buy it. "So someone's putting mannequins around town?" he said finally. "Weird, yeah, but not exactly a crime." "It's wearing my uniform," I said, my voice shaking. "It was waiting for me," he sighed. "Could be a prank. You'd be surprised what bored people do. Just stay alert, okay?" He left after 10 minutes. I felt worse than before he came. When I got to work that afternoon, the place was unusually quiet. Jake was chopping onions in the kitchen. Ruby was counting tips in the office. The diner felt off. I went to hang up my coat and saw something taped to my locker door. A photo. It showed the back alley behind Ruby's, the same one I'd walked through that night. In the corner of the photo, half hidden by shadow, stood the mannequin. Someone had written under it in red marker, "See you after work." My knees almost gave out. I ripped the photo down and stuffed it into my pocket. I didn't tell Ruby, what would I even say? That a mannequin was stalking me? That night I didn't take any route home. I called Jake instead. "Hey, you driving tonight?" "Yeah," he said. "Why?" "Can you give me a ride? Just..." "Don't ask why." He showed up after closing. I felt stupid sitting in his car, clutching my bag like it was a life raft. "You sure you're okay?" he asked. "I will be," I said, "once I'm home." He drove in silence, the radio playing soft country music. The rain started again, thin streaks across the windshield. When we pulled up to my building, I reached for the handle, then froze. Across the street, under the streetlight, stood the mannequin. Jake followed my gaze. "What the hell?" Before he could finish, the figure toppled forward, face first onto the pavement, arms bent awkwardly. It didn't move again. We sat there, silent, listening to the rain. The next day, I couldn't face going to work. I called in sick, though Ruby didn't sound convinced. Jake texted me later saying the police had come by the diner asking questions about vandalism. Someone had broken into the supply shed behind the building, left mannequin limbs scattered everywhere. I wanted to forget it all, but I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that blank plastic smile. I needed answers. So that night, I went back to where it started, the alley. It was just past midnight. The rain had stopped, but the ground was slick. I carried a flashlight and a kitchen knife I probably wouldn't know how to use. The alley was silent except for the hum of a distant generator. I swept the light over the walls and graffiti, trash bags, nothing else. Until I reached the dumpster. There, propped against the bricks, was the mannequin. Its limbs had been reattached. Its head tilted slightly like it was curious. My name tag still hung crookedly on its chest, and behind it, written on the wall in thick black spray paint, "I see you, Ellie." Something inside me cracked. "Who's doing this?" I shouted, my voice echoing off the walls. "What do you want?" For a moment, nothing. Then my footsteps. Real ones. A man stepped out from behind the dumpster, tall, wearing a hooded raincoat. He looked older, gaunt. I recognized him. He'd been a customer at the diner weeks ago. Always came in near closing, always sat alone. "I just wanted to see you," he said, voice soft. "You always smiled at me." Nobody else did. My stomach turned. "You followed me?" He nodded, eyes flicking to the mannequin. "Made her for you, so you'd never walk alone." I backed up. "You're sick. I'm lonely." Then he stepped closer and I ran. I dropped the flashlight, bolted down the alley, heart hammering in my ears. I didn't stop until I was pounding on a police station door 10 blocks away. They caught him that night. His name was Daniel Reeves. He'd worked at a department store years ago before getting fired for theft. The mannequins were leftover stock he'd stolen, repainted, dressed, posed. The police found dozens in a storage unit he rented near the train yard. He told them I was special. It's been 3 months now. Ruby's diner is back to normal. Jake still jokes about Ellie and her haunted mannequin, but I just smile. I quit taking the alley. I don't even work the late shift anymore. But sometimes, walking home, I still hear footsteps behind me. I tell myself it's just the echo of my own. At least I hope it is. Never ignore the unease that whispers in your gut. We grow up learning to be polite, to second-guess fear, to rationalize danger as coincidence. But instincts exist for a reason. The moment something feels wrong, it usually is.